Emad Haffar, who is the head of technical experts for the Middle East, Turkey and Africa at Kaspersky, joins us on What's Next. Emad, it's great to have you on with us. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, AK. Glad to be here.
So, Kaspersky's been around for a long time. I remember my early days in the technology world. Kaspersky's been around, I'm not sure how many decades, but it's well over 2 decades. So, what does make Kaspersky an authority on this topic of the most prominent cyber threats facing businesses today, organizations here in South Africa?
Absolutely, okay. So for those who don't know us, Kaspersky is a global privately held cybersecurity and digital privacy company. As you rightly mentioned, we were established in 1997. Today, with more than 24 years of experience, we are proudly serving more than 400 million users globally, as well as 240,000 companies. From day one, Kaspersky was focused on innovation and research. We are very successful in transforming our customers' requirements and needs, cybersecurity requirements and needs, into solutions and services that would cater specifically for their, again, requirements and needs. When it comes to research, of course, this is a very important pillar in Kaspersky. Our global research and analysis team is one of the core teams in the company, and their essential role is to provide the company with the research capability to track and hunt threat actors and their campaigns globally. So this is a team that's made up of around 50 security researchers scattered all over the world, including Meta region as well. And their bread and butter is security research. So again, they track the highly sophisticated threat actors, the APT grade threat actors, as well as state-sponsored cyber criminals and threat actors groups, and then they report on their activities. And this is quite critical, not only for Kaspersky as a company, because we do use the result of their research in developing our services and solutions that we provide to our customers, but as well to any entity who is interested in cyber threat intelligence, in acquiring information and intelligence, basically, about these threat actors. Financially, the company has been very stable over the years. Last year, in 2021, the unaudited revenue of the company reached $752 million globally, a fact of 6.5% growth in last year during 2021. In Africa and Sub-Sahara territory, we operate currently in around 40 countries with multiple regional offices. Our business grew in Africa 3% last year. In the B2B segment, we grew by 26% last year alone. All that obviously coming from the trust that we have gained, the trust of users that we have gained in Africa and the rest of the world. And obviously that translates in our ability to provide better services, better visibility on threat and threat actors, and consequently better security for our customers.
Well, that's great, and congratulations on that growth. I mean, the one cyber threat that everyone is talking about is ransomware, and you hear about ransomware every single day. It's hitting companies every single day. And these, of course, are the companies that are saying that we've had a ransomware and that have been hit. But what makes ransomware such a huge threat in South Africa?
Absolutely. First of all, let me start talking about what is a ransomware. So in some sense, ransomware is an extortion software. It has the ability to encrypt data, and then it obviously prevent the users or the owner of this data and files from accessing files unless they pay a ransom, and hence the name ransomware. This kind of attack started quite a few years back, and they started attacking individuals. We categorize ransomware under the commodity malware category. That basically means that it's a kind of malware that targets anyone and everyone. It doesn't distinguish the business, the sector, or even the geography of the user. And unfortunately, they were quite successful implementing. I mean, the cyber criminals and threat actors implementing ransomware for quite a few reasons, which we can touch based upon in a minute. However, in probably towards the end of 2020, during the pandemic, we noticed a change, a shift in the behavior of threat actors. They started to target corporates more than individuals with ransomware. Now, obviously, they realized that they can use the ransomware not only to encrypt the sensitive information, the sensitive data that corporates own, but also they can leak out the encrypted data, and then they use it as a leverage point to push those companies to pay the ransom. So they threaten of leaking out the data if they don't comply with their requirement or requests. Now, this is on its own a very huge risk to companies, because if the company can't access its data, that means the business will stop, their operation will stop. Now, just think if this attack is targeting critical infrastructure facilities like power generation, the health sector, even the financial sector as well. That could lead to a catastrophic results on the society. And that obviously what makes the ransomware a big trend globally, not only in South Africa, because threat actors, they understand the power, the leverage that they can use when they utilize ransomware in their attack. Now, unfortunately, our telemetry data shows that ransomware attacks in South Africa in particular doubled in the period between January and April of this year, comparing to last year, of course.
Gee, that's quite scary when you say they've actually doubled over this period, and this is what we hear about, right? There's a lot of stuff that companies won't make public. What advice do you have for organizations who want to protect themselves against ransomware attacks? What does one do?
Well, first, probably let's look at the infection vectors. Because that will lead us to what we can do to protect our companies and even individuals from ransomware. Usually ransomware, they come through infected or malicious rather links, and they are delivered to the users through social engineering, either in an email message, through social media, instant messaging, any communication medium that can deliver such content to the user. But the point here is the social engineering factor. So threat actors and cyber criminals, they will use social engineering techniques so that they push the user, or actually make the user to follow that link, to click on the link and see where it takes them. And obviously it takes them to a compromised website where it can download a malicious payload, or maybe forward them to another website. But the point again is that it would download or deliver the malicious content, the ransomware, to the targeted machine. The other vector is software vulnerabilities. And this means that we use a software, potentially the operating system itself, and it has a weakness. It has a hole in it that threat actors can abuse rather, to deliver malicious content to the machine. One example related to the ransomware is the WannaCry back in 2017.
Yes.
It abused a known vulnerability in the SMB protocol. That's basically the protocol our machines use to access files over the local network. So it exploited that vulnerability to implement the encryption module of the WannaCry. It was a huge pandemic, huge infection globally. It infected probably more than 200,000 machines globally in 150 countries, only by exploiting that software vulnerability. The other infection vector is the infected software. In this case, the software, the legitimate software that the user probably is trying to use, is used as a Trojan horse, as a carrier to deliver another software to the infected machine or to the targeted machine. And that software will be the ransomware, obviously. Now, looking at this potential infection vector, obviously the advice or recommendation we can give to the listeners is quite a few. One of the most important advice is the awareness. That means educating our employees, educating even ourselves, our families, on the on ransomware and other malwares as well. How to exercise the safe, correct use of the tools and devices we have today to prevent and protect ourselves from such infections. So how to handle spam, for example, how to handle phishing, how to spot that this is potentially a phishing website or a phishing link, how to deal with social engineering techniques, how to tell if someone is actually just pushing me to click that link fast without thinking. So awareness is quite essential for both company employees and individuals as well. When it comes to vulnerabilities, obviously, we need to patch and update any software we use, and this is very important, making sure that we are using the latest patches and software updates for all the applications and software we have on the probably our laptops, mobile devices, etc., because that will deliver the security patches that will close and patch these any existing vulnerability. Data backup is important as well, because that allows us to have access at least to a backup of the data, should it be encrypted.
Right.
Utilizing the technology, using solutions, protection solution, in particular, the endpoint protection solution. Kaspersky Endpoint Protection, for example, it has a module that is specifically created to detect ransomware, to detect the behavior of any potential ransomware code, and then limit its ability to execute, terminate it altogether, and roll back any change that it introduced to the system. Probably last but not least, and this is specifically for companies, is to be prepared for such an attack, creating procedures and planning for such an incident should it happen. So we actually had released a study a while ago, and it was looking into the cost of security incidents. And one of the expected results was that the longer it takes the companies to respond to a security incident, the more costly it is. So those companies who have in place rather the procedures, the playbooks, the plans, how to react, whom to contact when such an incident happens, they are in a better place than those who just wait for the incident to happen and then they think how to respond to it.
So we've seen a large increase in the number of prominent organizations who've had their data compromised in South Africa. And we were just talking about it now, and ransomware, you take the data, it's compromised. Why is this trend increasing locally? And what do organizations do to ensure that they're not the next victim of a data breach? Because, of course, when your data gets breached and the recovery of the data is, we know that almost a third of data is not usable after recovery. But, this is a big trend as well.
Absolutely. And actually, it's a global trend as well, not only in Africa. Today, data is the most expensive commodity on earth. And obviously, cyber criminals, they're aware of that fact. They're aware how to, or what they can do with the data, how they can monetize the data once they have their hands on it. And that definitely is driving the trend, increasing the trend of data breaches. And of course, we should add to that multiple other factors as well that are supporting and helping this trend. One of which is the our reliance on technology. So today, technology is there in every aspect of our lives, individuals and companies as well. And our society's reliance on technology means that we are creating larger attack surface if we don't, monitor and take care and implement those technologies correctly. So threat actors, they will find new techniques, new routes, gateways to utilize these technologies against our companies and individuals as well. That, of course, leads to the other factor, which is the sophistication of threat actors. One of the challenges I think that small and medium businesses in particular are facing is the fact that less sophisticated threat actors, smaller threat actors, are today borrowing, renting, and buying highly sophisticated implants and malicious codes from larger threat actors. This is a very common practice on the underground and dark web. And that's why SMBs in particular, again, will find themselves most often up against very sophisticated attack, whereas in general, they wouldn't be, prepared for such an attack, unlike a large, well-matured enterprise, for example. And that definitely leads to a third factor, which is the supply chain attack, in which we mean the attackers will go after a smaller company that is not probably well protected, and they will use it as a vehicle to target a large enterprise that usually they cannot target directly. We've seen these attacks many times over the past years, and in one of our studies as well, we came to the conclusion that the attacks through third parties or through supply chain attack is one of the most costly data breaches for enterprises last year in 2021. As a matter of fact, the global cost, average cost of such attacks was 1.4 million $1 million globally. In META, Middle East, Turkey, and Africa, it was just under $1 million mark.
Wow.
So you see, that's a huge risk to all organizations. And of course, add to that the other factors like the shortage in skilled workforce, the limited budget and spending on security and security tools and training, etc. Now, from all that, we can look into the recommendation, and this is usually what we do recommend to our customers, how we talk to our customers and advise them to handle the situation. One is to empower the cybersecurity team within the organization, not only through providing the tools and technologies they need to protect the organization, but also through the training. And this is quite important because through training, we can increase the efficiency of the cybersecurity team, make them able to detect and respond to sophisticated attacks, and consequently improve the value and the extracted value rather of the existing tools. We, for example, at Kaspersky, we provide many customers in Africa and in all META and the globe training, vendor independent training. So training that doesn't, talk Kaspersky tools and solutions, but rather our experience in activities such as incident response, malware analysis, reverse engineering, and all similar threat hunting. This is very important one as well, so that the security team can improve their capabilities and ability to utilize the security tools. Of course, speaking of the security team, SOC, Security Operations Center, and all the likes, similar cybersecurity teams, cyber threat intelligence is very important as well. At the beginning, I did mention this, but cyber threat intelligence is one of the vehicles through which we can deliver knowledge to the security team of the threat landscape, the recent threats, attacks, the techniques, the tactics, even the indicators they need to be aware of at the current time, so that they better protect their organization and they are able to hunt for threats as well. In addition, of course, to the technology itself. So tools, we shouldn't underestimate the value of the tools, like the EDR, endpoint protection, maybe the anti-APT solution. And for those organizations who can't afford to have a team to operate such maybe complicated tools, they can depend on services like managed detection and response. We are one of the vendors who provide that service, in which we provide the round-the-clock monitoring and threat hunting for any organization who can't or doesn't currently have a cybersecurity team to take care of these aspects.
Okay, well, that's good to know because, these budgets are tight these days. Not all organizations can afford to have a huge security team. Another key security risk for local organizations is, of course, the new hybrid working trend. And although we are seeing a resurgence around the world, we've really seen things almost returning back to normal. But of course, a lot of people working remotely. What cybersecurity risks are local organizations facing as a result of this new way of working?
Well, over the past 2 years, during the pandemic, the lockdown, obviously as you rightly mentioned, the shift in the work mode from on-premise to remote, completely remote, and now hybrid, meant that threat actors can utilize new attack routes, basically attacking the remote employees. Because when these employees work remotely, it's not simply that they're outside the network, but they are actually now trying to access all the resources, all the corporate resources and corporate data, the way they used to when they were inside the network, but now they do it from outside. Yes. So a lot of other things now come into play. Now we have to think of the protection of the device itself, if they're using their personal device, protection of the Wi-Fi network they're on, for instance. And then obviously the security and the protection of the used software and protocols to implement this remote work and hybrid working model. One of the protocols that was mostly targeted in the past couple of years is the RDP, Remote Desktop Protocol. And as the name implies, this is the protocols that allows us to connect remotely to our corporate resources. So this was one of the most targeted protocol, specifically through targeting weak passwords, weak login and authentication passwords, maybe vulnerable application, vulnerable implementation of the RDP protocol, unprotected home network, Wi-Fi network, or public networks as well, because all these now can be used against the user to try and penetrate the corporate network. Now, even though we've seen a decrease in the past few months in the number of attacks against RDP, as obviously the number of users using this protocol to access their work remotely is decreasing. However, the number is still very high and considered to be a real concern globally and in South Africa. When we talk about mitigation, once again, it's the awareness. This is specifically for company employees being aware of their practices to access corporate resources. That means they are aware of how to protect their Wi-Fi network, what could be at play if they're using a public Wi-Fi network. They have to use a VPN if they are on a public network, what kind of passwords they use, how weak or how strong their passwords are, how easily they are to brute force attack, for example. The use of EDR, endpoint protection tool, and even mail security, all that will deliver some protection for employees even when they are outside the perimeter of their network. All that will lower the risks caused by such attacks. I mean, brute force attacks on RDP and all remote access protocols and software.
Yeah, yeah. Now, are there any other prominent cybersecurity threats that are increasingly prevalent here in South Africa that you're seeing at the moment?
Unfortunately, yes. And two probably of the most prominent security risks are the APTs and financial threats. APTs is the short for advanced persistent threats. Usually, these are the sophisticated and highly sophisticated attacks, and they are operated by large, well-funded, well-organized, potentially state-sponsored threat actors. The challenge with the APT isn't only the level of sophistication, but their level of sophistication allows them to remain undetected for months or even years. We have cases that we have investigated in the past where the threat actors managed to penetrate a network and they remained undetected for almost a year or more than a year. Just being there silently, collecting data, understanding the environment, the structure of the environment, performing their malicious activities completely undetected. Usually these threat actors, as I mentioned, they're not financially motivated, and that's what makes them a little bit more challenging than other threat actors, because they try and they need to be as silent as they can to run below the radar, under the radar, so that they are obviously undetected. Usually they target sensitive data. They run espionage, cyber espionage campaign. In certain cases, they might be after the critical infrastructure for destruction purposes. In South Africa in particular, our research shows that government, diplomatic, and educational sectors are highly targeted with APTs. And South Africa is one of the three most targeted countries, unfortunately, in Africa, alongside Nigeria and Egypt. Financial threats are also big threats in South Africa in particular. Those are obviously, financially motivated threat actors. So they are after financial gain. But because of the criticality and sensitivity of the financial sector, these kind of attacks can be very threatening to the society if they manage to, cripple the financial sector, for example.
Yes.
And that's why they pose a huge risk, not only to that sector in particular, but to the whole society. Now, unfortunately, in South Africa, the number of financial malware increased 11 times between Jan and April of this year, comparing to 2021.
Gee, that's quite a substantial increase. You say it's gone up 11 times.
It is, yes, unfortunately.
Okay.
In the first 4 months of
yes,
this
the
year.
first 4 months. But that's still, it's quite alarming to hear that kind of number. Finally, what tips
Absolutely.
do you have for local organizations who want to protect themselves against these malicious actors, what we've been talking about? Emad, what is your advice?
Well, actually, okay, the dialogue I always use with my clients is to focus on three pillars: people, technology, and processes. That means empower your employees with awareness program, proper training programs for the cybersecurity team, provide them with the tools and the support they need so that they can actually deliver the tasks that they are asked to deliver. Technology obviously is focusing on the tools and the security control solutions and the intelligence that the organization need to for the cybersecurity team to operate. So once we enable and empower the employees and the cybersecurity team, then they need the tools and the technologies and the cyber threat intelligence as well, to perform their tasks, to protect the organization. Third is the processes, and that means having in place all the plans, all the procedures, all the playbooks that are needed, for detecting malicious activities, for spotting malicious threat actors, and for responding as well. So essentially, that's setting the plans of how to detect threat actors, how to prevent their malicious activities in the first place, then how to detect them if they were the sophisticated threat actors, and then how to be able to hunt for these threat actors inside the organization. So basically, being more proactive than reactive. You go out and look for threats and threat actors that could be potentially inside the environment, but very silent and detected. And obviously having the plans in place to respond, to handle incidents, because eventually incidents will happen. So we are always in a better place if we are prepared to handle them ahead of time.
Great advice and fantastic insights, Emad, Haffar. Thank you so much for your time and sharing those thoughts and insights into a very, very complex environment and a very dangerous environment. Emad, thank you very much. Much appreciated.
Thank you so much, Shakir. Thank you for having me.